Okay, who do we have here? We've got Colin Liddell. Colin Liddell, any updated thoughts on the United States election?
Well, it's very confused at the moment, isn't it, really? It's not looking particularly good for Trump. But still, it's very, very hard to predict what's going to happen, because everything's going to depend upon certain people like judges and law courts and, party insiders, the people in the GOP in particular. How much backbone do they have? How much are they going to back Trump? At some point, you get the feeling that they're just going to shuffle off into the shadows and look after their own interests.
Colin, is it mainly an issue, perhaps, of Republicans lacking Republican politicians, legislators, officials lacking backbone, or perhaps they just have this incredible integrity and they believe in the process and they're Americans first before they're Republicans?
Well, I think there's some differences between the Republicans and the Democrats, and my impression is that both parties used to be kind of like much more based in their various localities. There was a kind of regional character to these parties, and that was appropriate because America was this vast, sprawling kind of rural country essentially, with a few cities dotted here and there. And what we've seen is that politics has become more centralized, and in the case of the Democratic Party, they've become more centralized than the Republican Party. And this has really kind of, affected the dynamic of politics in America. In the past, you had a two-party system, but it wasn't so polarizing because you had a lot of people, working across party boundaries, and there was a kind of collegial atmosphere between a lot of the senators and congressmen and so on. And also this affected the way the president played his role. But, as things have progressed, kind of political culture has changed, so you have much more centralization, especially on the Democratic side. And they're much more kind of Machiavellian because of that, and they're more prepared to do things, whereas the GOP, because they're not really as centralized, they're not as mobilized and focused on winning, let's just say.
Yeah, do you think that the future for conservative or right-wing political parties in the United States and in Europe is as parties of the working class?
What is the working class anyway? That's something that you have to think about, because there used to be a very kind of clear idea of the working class in countries like Britain and most countries, and even in America. But that seems to be changing quite a lot. I think most people in America would probably be described as middle class in some way. The economy is changing. A lot of working class jobs are no longer possible. Trump was partly about trying to bring that back. I'm not really sure if he's fundamentally changed American society. I somewhat doubt it. So the idea of working class people, you have kind of like welfare class people, then you have middle class people, and then you have a very small traditional working class. That seems to be how our societies are arranged at the moment. I mean, I don't think Boris Johnson really is representative of the working class. And of course, the Labour Party in Britain isn't representative of the working class either.
What is your sense? How significant is voter fraud in this United States election?
Well, I've seen so many things. Mainly it's like statistical anomalies, which are very, very hard to explain away, except through massive vote rigging and fraud. So I definitely think it's there. And, this is something that was always going to happen. Most people didn't expect there to be quite as much. And I think there is voter fraud, but also I think the Democrats have kind of mobilized a lot of votes through these mailed ballots and through harvesting these mailed ballots in a very organized way. Before you would mobilize your voters by having an inspiring message that got them to kind of come out and vote on election day and do their duty by voting for you. But what they do now is knock on people's doors. And this is a big advantage the Democrats have. They obviously have better data, I think, because of their connections to big tech. So they probably have very, very detailed information about all the people in various states, in targeted states, and they know from all this data, which they've probably been harvesting from social media and the like, that they know exactly where all the Democrat voters are and where all the Republican voters are. They know exactly which areas to go to, which doors to knock on, and they seem to have done this to a large degree. And in addition to that, they seem to be doing some of the more old-fashioned ballot box stuffing and dumping other stacks of votes down the toilet and so on.
What things have surprised you about this 2020 election in the United States this week?
Well, yeah, I guess I was surprised because I thought that I knew the polls were completely fake, and that seems to have been completely true. I also thought that the enthusiasm of the Republican voters for Trump would have more impact, and it didn't really seem to come through in some cases. And I'm a bit surprised by the degree to which the thoroughness with which the Democrats have technically mobilized their vote. I thought they would do some of that, but I also felt that it was such a lackluster campaign, and that might have been on purpose. That might have been part of their plan as well. They actually wanted to fight a lackluster campaign because if Joe Biden was barnstorming in the same way that Trump was barnstorming, he wouldn't have come across as well. He would have said a lot of things, made a lot of promises that would have pissed off and alienated parts of the Democrat voting bloc, and so they had this kind of nebulous hole in the donut kind of character of Joe Biden, and they basically fought the campaign on anti-Trumpism and a very, very thorough ground game.
Yeah, it's interesting how the Republicans, after warning about the dangers of mail-in voting, did not seem to be up to monitoring the situation. That suddenly, what from an outside perspective looks like a massive amount of fraud committed overnight when there weren't Republicans around to monitor the situation. Trump talked about the dangers of voter fraud, but didn't seem to effectively mobilize to combat it, and then seems completely unprepared to deal with the results.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do as well, though. Trump obviously had his hands full. He was going around the country giving speeches 3 or 4 times a day. But they really should have had somebody thinking ahead about this and imposing countermeasures. But again, there was a massive funding gap. The Democrats obviously had a lot more money. They had all the big tech people behind them, so their resources were much vaster. They also had these entrenched perma-blue cities where they could basically do more or less what they wanted to. And it was up to Trump to try and get people in there. And I think to a certain degree they tried. I do remember Trump calling for people to, be poll watchers quite often. In almost every speech he made, he was warning about the dangers of that, and he was calling for people to make sure that their votes were registered and all sorts of things like that. So I think there was an awareness on the part of Trump and the Republicans, but they were a little bit complacent, and they thought that they could just blow through it with a kind of positive campaign that mobilized the Republican base. But it seems that it wasn't really enough in a few key areas.
And it's striking how fired up much of the base is for Donald Trump, but how tepid the support is for Trump among other Republican politicians. They're not really stepping up. They're standing back, but they're not standing by.
Yeah, is anybody really surprised by that? These people are, they're part of the swamp to a large degree. They're very much part of the system, and they know that Trump is going to have to go one day, and so they don't want to rock the boat too much, which is a pity, because I think the boat definitely needs a lot of rocking.
Yeah, so Trump was never sure how competent he is, how efficient he is, and how able he is to mobilize people. Like, if you doubt him, he surprises you, and if you believe in him, he disappoints you. So it's just kind of confounding how efficient and effective will he be in tackling what seems to have been a stolen election.
Well, he was sort of fighting the last war in a way, and I think, I mean, obviously not Biden, but the people behind Biden were fighting this war, and they knew that Biden wasn't going to inspire people, but that's why they brought in this mail ballot thing, because you give everybody a ballot, and then most people are like, oh, what's this piece of junk mail I've received, and they just leave it on a table or whatever. And then a day or two later, because they really have accurate data, I'm sure, somebody knocks on your door and says, I'll help you to fill it in and send it off and all the rest of it. And so they basically designed their campaign to utilize very, very low enthusiasm, because if you have somebody just kind of saying, coming to your door and doing everything for you, and you don't actually have to make the effort of standing in line and going down to vote, then, most people will think, oh yeah, it's my duty, I guess. I may as well, I'll do this. Here it is, off you go. So basically they realized what they were dealing with, and to a certain degree, Trump wasn't really aware of that. He was still, in a sense, kind of trapped in 2016.
Yeah. It's confounding to see this go down and to see Trump winning with all demographics except white males. He lost 5 percentage points. How far are we from in a multiracial, multicultural America where whites will soon be a minority, where politicians will explicitly call for the white vote and lobby for the white vote just as they do for other demographic groups?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I mean, even if Trump got in, what's he really going to do that's going to change things? I mean, he's not really a radical. He's not going to take all the measures or implement all the measures that are required to stop things going that way. I mean, he hasn't really fought the culture wars. He's not somebody who really opposes feminism. He's not somebody who really opposes mass immigration. He's not really a true nationalist or a candidate who exemplifies white nationalism or the traditional demographic of America. He is probably a more efficient manager of a culturally Marxist, corporatist state.
Let me run something by you that I read in The Atlantic today. It's by Zeynep Tufekci. She's on the left, and she writes, Trump was incompetent at his brand of authoritarianism, and he lost. But this is not a triumph. The Democrats lost almost everything else. Make no mistake about what's coming. The next Trumpist in 2024 will be talented, competent, and not easy to beat. So the situation is a perfect setup for a talented politician to run on Trumpism in 2024. A man without the eager Twitter fingers and greedy hotel chains. Someone with a penchant for governing rather than golf. An individual who does not irritate everyone who doesn't already like him. Someone who isn't on tape boasting about assaulting women. A norm-subverting strongman who can also create a durable majority and keep his coalition together to win more elections. The attempt to harness Trumpism without Trump, but with calculated, refined, and smarter political talent is coming. Any thoughts?
Well, my main thought is that the only thing that can save America is a dictator who combines the traits of Benito Mussolini and Osama bin Laden. But like keeping things in the realm of kind of normie politics, I think there's a certain amount of validity in what she's saying. You need somebody who's going to mobilize the base, but not antagonize people outside the base. This is partly one of the reasons they picked. The Democrats picked Biden because they thought, okay, he's not going to exactly mobilize the base, but we have certain technical fixes we can use to cover up that deficiency. But he's not going to really piss too many people off, even though he's obviously going to piss off a lot of Trump voters. But he has that kind of quality where people are not really, as opposed to Hillary, because Hillary got people's hair to stand on end. There's a visceral disgust. And I guess for left-wingers, Trump is like a kind of male Hillary in that respect. They just loathe him and they overreact, and this creates a lot of anti-Trump energy, and this can be mobilized in various ways to defeat Trump's agenda, as we're maybe possibly seeing at the moment. So it's good to have somebody like who has Trump's good points, but maybe avoid some of his unnecessarily abrasive touches. Yeah.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks so much for stopping by. I got to run off. I'll talk to you another time, my friend.
Okay. Good night.
Good night, Colin. Good night, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Because this is a difficult time, a confusing time. And when people hear these lies and crazy conspiracies repeated over and over and over again, they don't know what to think. With everything going on in their lives, they don't have time to fact check falsehoods being spread throughout the internet.